You begin with a simple conviction. Light reveals, shadow conceals. You associate clarity with truth and obscurity with ignorance. The pattern feels natural. What is visible must be real, and what is hidden must be less. Yet Ibn Arabi questioned this assumption. He taught that the apparent separation between light and shadow belongs not to reality itself, but to perception. What you call ignorance may be the very condition through which knowing arises. The shadow, he suggested, is not the absence of illumination, but its necessary form. You pause before this inversion. If shadow participates in revelation, then clarity is not the opposite of concealment, it is its continuation. The question turns inward. Is understanding found by escaping limitation, or by realizing what limitation quietly reveals? For Ibn Arabi, reality is not divided. All existence is a continuous disclosure of the real, an unbroken act of divine self-revelation. Every being expresses a degree of that disclosure, but no being can exhaust it. Because infinite truth must appear through finite form, it must also appear through limitation. The world, therefore, is not pure radiance or pure obscurity. It is the precise meeting point of both. What you perceive as shadow is not a defect in being. It is the boundary through which the limitless becomes intelligible. Without it, nothing could appear at all. You often imagine that knowing means complete clarity. Yet clarity alone cannot be recognized. It needs its opposite to define it. You know warmth by the possibility of cold, presence by the possibility of absence. Ibn Arabi explained that the intellect perceives only through such contrast. Awareness needs the rhythm of unveiling and veiling to recognize itself. Without limitation, knowledge would dissolve into undifferentiated unity, nothing to know. No knower to perceive. You begin to see that ignorance is not the failure of knowledge, but its condition. The shadow becomes a form of guidance. Could it be that not knowing is also a way of knowing? Ibn Arabi described the human being as an isthmus, a boundary joining two realities. You live at the junction of the infinite and the finite, the clear and the obscure. Your intellect reaches upward toward understanding, while your embodied nature keeps you grounded in limitation. To be human is to stand precisely between light and shadow. This middle position is not a flaw. It is your function. If you were purely luminous, you would dissolve in what you perceive. If you were purely shadowed, you could not perceive at all. The question becomes, what does awareness mean within this balance? Ibn Arabi saw in limitation a form of mercy. Absolute illumination, he said, would overwhelm existence. Distinction itself would vanish, leaving no space for recognition. The dimming of awareness, the degrees of partial knowing, allow creation to exist as relation. Shadow preserves the world from being consumed by what sustains it. You realize that imperfection is not punishment. It is the structure through which meaning appears. Your incompleteness allows participation in what transcends you. Were the shadow removed, even light would lose its name. What appears as distance from the real may in fact be the tenderness that makes perception possible. You try to rid yourself of uncertainty. You aim to become pure, untouched by doubt or weakness. But the more you resist limitation, the more it defines you. Ibn Arabi warned that rejecting the shadow is a subtle arrogance. It assumes that perfection can exist apart from the process through which it unfolds. To deny the shadow is to deny the condition that allows understanding to arise. You begin to see that what you reject in yourself is also what connects you to the real. Every limit, when examined honestly, points beyond itself. Every negation conceals an affirmation. You observe that your awareness fluctuates. At times you feel clear and composed. At others, scattered and uncertain. Thought arises, fades, and reforms. Ibn Arabi interpreted this movement as the rhythm of divine self-disclosure within consciousness. Your inner alternations are not failures of attention. They are expressions of how being reveals itself through time. To know yourself, then, is not to fix this rhythm but to understand its necessity. Even confusion carries a trace of order. The mind that can question its own obscurity already contains the light it seeks. Perhaps the brightness of knowing depends on the humility of not knowing. Ibn Arabi extended this insight to the entire cosmos. Every form, he said, is a symbol and appearance through which the infinite articulates itself. Because no finite thing can display infinite being completely, every form stands in partial shadow. The imperfection of the world is therefore not evidence of divine absence, but of divine measure. Each limitation reveals what unlimitedness would otherwise conceal. To recognize this is to see creation not as a barrier to truth, but as its living language. The world does not obscure the real. It speaks it through difference. If shadow and light coexist in all things, perception itself becomes an ethical act. You can no longer divide reality into pure and impure, sacred and profane, without misjudging its nature. Ibn Arabi taught that true wisdom lies in discernment, not rejection. To see divine manifestation in what appears deficient is to perceive beyond appearances. When you meet what seems dark, the question is not how to destroy it, but how to understand its function. Every judgment, if incomplete, casts its own shadow. Can you learn to see both aspects at once, to perceive without excluding? The hidden path is not a road to another world. It is a recognition within this one. To walk it is to realize that every alternation, clarity and obscurity, knowing and confusion, belongs to one reality. Ibn Arabi's teaching dissolves the illusion of separation between concealment and revelation. The real never hides. It only discloses itself through degrees. You begin to understand that illumination is not a final state, but an ongoing rhythm. The shadow is not the end of light. It is the continuation of its meaning. The hidden path is hidden only to the eye that demands certainty. You began by opposing shadow and light, as if one must triumph over the other. You end by recognizing that they define and sustain each other. Ibn Arabi's insight reveals reality as a single field of manifestation, sometimes clear, sometimes veiled. Always complete. To understand is not to remove obscurity, but to perceive its role in making truth discernible. The movement between knowing and not knowing, presence and absence, becomes the very texture of awareness. The mind rests not in answers, but in recognition. Light and shadow no longer compete. They disclose a unity that was never divided. You no longer search for a brighter light or a clearer path. You see that both illumination and obscurity occur within the same awareness that perceives them. The distinction you once guarded has dissolved into understanding. Ibn Arabi's wisdom ends not in a conclusion, but in stillness, the quiet recognition that the real is never absent. The shadow was never an obstacle. It was the sign of participation. You do not transcend it. You comprehend it. And in that comprehension, the need to seek vanishes. What remains is understanding itself whole